Welcome back to the MIDI Toolkit tutorial, where we're building up a game that's in the Guitar Hero style, where we're tapping controls in time to the music. If you haven't already done the first two parts of Run to the Rhythm, you'll need to go back and do those as we're going to continue the project from where we left off. From where we left off, we had the game so that dots were moving down the side of the screen and you had to hit them in time to the music. So let's pick straight back up from there. So it is. So that is looking very promising. So let's go back in and remove notes that have gone off the bottom of the screen from the list. So that will be over in there, update notes. And we can check note frames using an if else. And if the note wait frames has become less than exit screen count, which we set up earlier. So it's good to have those set up earlier so they're all done in one go. So if it's less than that, then we actually want to delete the note. So I'm going to add a custom block for that. So make a block and I'll call it delete note. And all this is going to do is basically delete the note, which I should have added a parameter to this. Let's edit that. Delete note, add an input index so I can choose which note to delete. So I'll delete the note and that will just delete it from the list. So delete index of note instrument and delete index of note wait frames. Now when they're moving off the bottom of the screen, it's always going to be the first one in the list that's getting removed. But later on when I'm actually playing notes, they're going to get removed as I play them as well. So I can't guarantee it'll always be the first element in the list. So back to here. If you've gone off the bottom of the screen, then I want to delete the note. So delete note index. And if it hasn't gone off the bottom of the screen, then I want to update the list. And then we'll carry on through the rest of the entries. And that's pretty much the hard work out of the way. Actually displaying the notes was probably the longest of the code we're going to do. So let's look at adding the actual player controls for this new system. So we'll have a broadcast receiver. When I receive new message, and it's going to be player controls. And this is just going to check if your mouse is down. Then you want to see if you've done it at the right time. We're going to need a variable. I'm going to call it mouse down question mark, because it's going to be a true or false. So if the mouse wasn't previously down, and it is now, so that's going to be an AND operator, and an equals operator. So if mouse down is false and the mouse is down, then it means we weren't pressing it before and we're pressing it now. So we're going to scan for the notes, and at the end of this function we're going to update our mouse down variable. So we'll set mouse down to the status of mouse down. So all this does is quite simply make sure that we're only checking if the mouse has just been pressed. So if on the last frame the mouse wasn't down, so mouse down is false, but it is down on this frame, then we will check to see if we've hit a note. And we'll do that in a custom block because this is definitely going to involve a loop. we definitely need to do this quickly. So we'll make a block called scan notes, run without screen refresh so that it is quick through the loops. Now we'll add a variable called hit question mark, true or false, to determine if we've actually successfully hit a note. And when we first come into this function, we'll set it to false because we haven't hit anything until we've started scanning. And what we need to bear in mind is that we might hit more than one note. If two notes are very close together and we tap the mouse, we might set both of them off. So we need to go through a loop on this. So I'm going to set a new variable called I, which I'm going to use for indexing this. And we're going to set I to 1 at the beginning of the list. Now I'm going to start referring to something called leniency, which is how accurate you need to be when the red block passes through this white line. And I'm going to say if any of it is touching this white line, then it's going to count as a hit. So it might be slightly early, or it might be slightly late, but that's the leniency that I'll allow. I'm going to actually set a value for that leniency. So let's make one more, and I think probably the last constant variable, so underscore leniency for this sprite only, and we'll set that up with all of the other blocks in initialize. So the distance we're going to allow, and this is going to be measured in frame count, not in pixels. The distance is going to be half of the diameter, either above or below the line. So let's set leniency to note diameter divided by 2. And because we're doing it in terms of frames or updates rather than distance, we're going to divide that by delta y per frame, or the distance we're traveling every frame. And that's going to be our leniency. And while I'm down here, when I'm resetting the visualization, I'm also going to set mouse down to true. You might wonder why I'm setting it to true and not false. Well, as soon as it goes through the update function, the player controls, if you're not pressing, well, if you've gone into this with the mouse down, then you don't want mouse down to be false because it might trigger off a note. So just setting it to true means it's going to pass through here at least once and update to the actual status of the mouse. So it won't let this happen until you've released the mouse or the mouse hasn't been down. And when the mouse is down, we're going to call our custom block, which is going to scan the notes. So scan notes we've already started on. We're going to have a repeat until. Now, because of the order notes get added, the notes at the beginning of the list are always going to be the ones that are dropping off the screen the first, the ones at the bottom. So this might be note 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as you're going up the screen. So we need to start scanning at the beginning of the list. We can stop scanning as soon as we've got to one that's above the white line. We don't need to check any others after that point. So we will repeat. It's going to be an OR, because there's two conditions we'll stop repeating on. One is if the index has gone past the end of the list of notes to check. So if I is greater than the length of don't wait frames, then we've run out of notes, so we don't want to carry on anymore. I'm just going to squeeze this over to the right a bit further because I'm running out of space here. Okay, so let's neaten things up a little bit. So, if I've run out of notes, then I don't want to repeat anymore, and if I've already gone above the white line, then I can stop as well. So, it's another greater than because it's negative at the bottom and positive at the top. So, or item I of note wait frames is greater than leniency. So that would be the other reason I would stop. It looks like I'll just move that even further over there just to give myself a little bit more room. So the loop is set up. Now let's see if I've actually hit a note. So if, it's going to be an if-else, which you'll see why in a minute. The condition, if note wait frames is 0, it means it's smack on the line, because that's how we set the variables up. So it will count down from the value, and when it's crossing the white line, that value will be 0. So if it's 0, then I've hit it exactly, but I'm giving it a bit of leniency, don't forget, leniency. So instead of being equals, I'll do a less than. And I'm also going to use an ABS, which means absolute, because I don't mind if the note's above or below. So if it's +2 or -2, that's probably going to be acceptable as well. So let's copy this across, duplicate. If note wait frames is less than leniency, then I'm going to call it a winner. And if it's a winner, then I want to delete that note block. Obviously I want something else to happen as well, but for now we'll just delete the note block, and the note block is index I. And I don't need to increase the index if I've deleted a note, because if you consider I'm on note 3 and I've deleted note 3, then note 4 will have moved down to where note 3 is, so I don't need to change the index. But if I haven't deleted a note, then I do need to change my index by 1. So change I by 1. Also, if I've done a successful hit, I'll set the hit variable to true. So as long as I've hit at least one note, then that will then be true. And that is literally all I need to do to see if I've hit a note. As easy as that. So I need to broadcast to do my player controls. So I'll do that from in the player sprite. After I've updated the notes, I'll broadcast player controls. So now, hopefully, as it's running down, notes will vanish as they go off the bottom of the screen, but also if I tap it at the right time.
9.
Here, makes no difference, but here,
5.
they're disappearing if I tap at the correct time. So that's working nicely. Well, we've still got that countdown going on in the background, and we're not going to do a 10-second game anymore. We're going to do a game from the beginning of the song to the end of the song. So we need to actually change some of the code in the player sprite. I'm going to get rid of these comments because these were just here to show you what I'd changed from the original tutorial code. Now, I no longer want to play the music when I first start, but I'm going to use MIDI load, which is something I've recently added to the toolkit, which will load the music and prepare it ready to be played, so there won't be a pause at all when I go to play the music. I'm still going to start the game by tapping the mouse, but I no longer want a countdown, and I no longer care about how quickly I'm tapping the mouse. So I'm going to get rid of those completely. What I am going to put in there is broadcast MIDI play. So I'll start playing the music when I've tapped the mouse the first time. I'm no longer interested in checking how quickly I'm tapping the mouse, so I'll get rid of monitor click speed. And I'll get rid of these comments because, again, these were just to say what had been updated. And because I've got rid of a lot of code in this player sprite, I no longer need half of these variables. So I still need distance, I need to know how far I've gone. And I still need the animation counter as I'm still doing animations. And I still need the player speed. But previously, player speed was for this sprite only, but I'm actually going to be changing that value from the visualization sprite. So I've got player speed here. I'm going to create a new variable called player speed, but with a capital P, because I'm making it for all sprites. When I do a for all sprites variable, I always capitalize the first letter, so it's obvious just by looking. And everywhere that I'm updating player speed in the code, I'm going to change it from using the small p to the large p version, from the for the sprite only to the for all sprites version. Firstly, for initialized game, I don't need costume counter anymore, but I will just change that so it's going to play a speed with a capital P. I'm going to start with a speed of 0. The other variables I don't need to set up anymore there. But what I do need to do is, when the song is completed, I don't want to play it now because I actually want the game to end. So when I've reached the end of the song, I'm just going to set racing to false rather than play the song again. So I know that instead of when 10 seconds is up, the race is over. Now when the song is finished, the race is over. So now back to checking through for the player speed. In update player, there's a player speed, so I'll change that to use the capitalized one. It's important we get all of these. So there was one in the green flag block as well, if I recall. Yes, checking his speed is 0, so that one as well. Back to the update player. I've changed that one. Now, I'm going to change how this works slightly as well. I no longer want to use animation speed. I just want to say, when he's running faster, make him animate quicker. And so when his speed is 0, then I want him to animate really slowly because he'll be doing his idle animation. As his speed goes up, he should animate quicker. So instead of animation speed, I'm just going to use 15 minus player speed using the for all sprites version of player speed. Now, update background uses the player speed, so again I will change that over. And finally, I believe update race distance uses the player speed, so I'll modify that as well. And the countdown receiver I no longer need. I'm not doing a countdown, so I don't need the speak receiver either. And then the only other functions are the ones for cloud variables on the right hand side there. So that's all neatened up, but nothing is changing the player speed now. Oh, monitor click speed. Sorry, I don't need that anymore either. That can go. This code is getting smaller. I don't need monitor running clicks because I'm not doing the clicking anymore. But I do want it so that when I'm in a correct note in visualization sprite, if I do a correct note, then I want to speed up. So here we are. I've hit a note. So let's change the player speed. I could just change it by 1, but if several people get all the notes correctly, they're going to get exactly the same score. They're going to be traveling at exactly the same speed. So I'm going to add a touch of accuracy. As I said before, we're allowing a little bit of leniency. I want to go faster if I hit the note exactly at the right time. And still faster if I don't, but not as much. So instead of just changing it by 1, I'm going to change it by 1 minus. And now I'm going to create a variable, a value between 0 and 1. So I know that I'm allowed anything up to leniency. So let's divide it by leniency. And what I'm going to divide by leniency is the absolute value of note wait frames. So I'll copy that, duplicate that, put it in there. And so if I'm smack on, then this value is 0, which means player speed is going up by 1. If I've got this as far out as possible, so this value equals leniency, then leniency divided by leniency is 1, so 1 minus 1 is 0, so it won't go up at all. So it's going to go up from a range between 0 and 1 there. But if I've clicked the mouse and I haven't hit a note, I'm going to penalise the player. Otherwise they can just tap the mouse as quickly as they can and hope they get all the notes. This will stop them doing that, because if they've tapped the mouse and they've come out of here with hit being false, which means they haven't hit any notes at all, then I'm going to change the speed, but I'm going to change it by -1. So now we can make the player go quicker, and he can also go slower. And if a note moves off the bottom of the screen, then that means I've completely missed that note, haven't clicked for it at all. So that's another case where I want to penalise the player. So if the note's gone off the bottom of the screen, I've deleted the note, then at that point I'm also going to change the player speed by -1, because you have to be penalised if you're it's not just missing it by clicking the wrong time, but not clicking at all. And if I go back into the player sprite, I'm going to add a function in here which just checks that the value of player speed stays between 0 and 15. So I'll add a receiver. When I receive, I'm going to call it finalize speed, because this is just going to check everything about the speed variable is okay. So new message, finalize speed. And this is just going to say if else, and it's if your player speed is less than 0, then I'm going to make it equal to 0, so I can't go less than 0. So we'll set player speed using the capital P one. Now I don't actually need a little one anymore. I've gone through and it's very important you've got all of the occurrences of the little one, and once you have, we'll just delete that because we're not using it anymore. So if your player speed is less than 0, set it to 0, and else if it's greater than 15, then we'll set it to 15. It just clamps it within a range, because we don't want the player to go faster and faster until you can hardly see him, and we don't want him to go slower than stop. So this just clamps in between 0 and 15. And I think the other thing we'll do in here, once the race is over, once the music's finished, we don't want him to just carry on running forever. So once the race is over, we'll start him slowing down. So if racing is false, and we don't want him to come to an immediate stop or just fall on his head, we want him to slow down. So if racing equals false, then we'll change the player speed by a small amount. So change player speed by -0.1. And actually, instead of having that at the end of the block, we'll put that up at the beginning, so that if it goes less than 0, it still clamps it to 0. And the last thing we need to do here is actually broadcast to finalize speed. So we'll add that underneath display notes. Broadcast finalize speed. And we don't need this counter anymore, we're not using the counter. In fact, there's various variables I could actually just delete. I could go through and clean this up. And you can do that yourself if you wish. There are variables that are no longer being used. This should essentially give me a fully working game now. So that feels like a great point to bring this part of the tutorial to a close. In the next part, we'll finish this game off, so we've got a really fun run to the rhythm Guitar Hero style game. And I hope you've really enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe to the RokCoder YouTube channel if you have, and then you'll get a notification when the next part of the tutorial is out. And I'll see you again next time.